7 years. Before moving to San Bruno, before moving to Menlo Park, I lived in San Bruno as the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Committee Chair on there, and served for about 4 years there as well. In 2011, I joined the board of Bellhaven Community Foundation, along with people like Carolyn Clark, Eva Cuffey, and participate in a lot of events to help make Bellhaven a stronger voice in the greater city of Menlo Park. And those are the things that I have done for Menlo Park so far. Right now, on the Sister City Commission, I'm the vice chair right now, and thanks to that, we have a visit to descend. Yesterday. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, last year we have a trip to descend for the kids from Bellhaven to there and visit their cities, and then we have exchange programs. So kids from Bellhaven, we have 2 of them, going to descend and learn from them. So those are things I've done so far. Now, for going forward, people ask me all the time, why am I running for city council? I think the 2 issues comes to mind. Number 1 is transit. Number 2 is safety. Now, many of you have been here last time, so I want to do some of the recap from the debate last time, and I've done some homework and done some research on those issues. Last time I talked about local hire. So how we can have the police department hire people locally. And for that, I actually go to the police department, I talk to people there, I ride along with them twice. So I meet this officer, his name is Maricel. He's 24 years old, he's born in East Palo Alto, grew up in East Palo Alto, and he started at age 16, joined the program for police explorers, and in 4 years, become a police officer in Menlo Park, making $50 an hour. And those are the things that we need to do in this community to have more people participating in our city government. I am someone who does research, does homework, so I learn things. Every time you come to me with a great idea, I'm going to learn from that and find out if there's a way to make it work. I'm very accessible. If you have a great idea for Bellhaven, come to me, talk about it, and I will find a way, I'll do the research to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Cecilia, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. It is a blessing to stand before you today, and I'm honored to stand before you as a candidate for Menlo Park City Council, District 1. I am running because I was inspired by the 6,863 votes I received in 2016. That election was a demonstration that the city of Menlo Park wants change and a new perspective on the council. The issues identified in 2016 are still present today. It is my duty to run again. My family has lived in this community for 3 generations. I attended the school that we're sitting at today, Bellhaven Elementary School, and I attended several other schools in the Ravenswood School District. I have made it my goal for the past several years since I ran to stay informed and to stay involved in what's happening in the community. I created an organization called Bellhaven Action, and Bellhaven Action has worked on several projects in this community. One being a letter writing campaign to house homeless seniors. The second was an inspirational campaign to have a park named after a community member that passed away at 100 years old by the name of Carl E. Clark. The third that I did was a music and movement project over the summer. It was a workshop to get people active and also to listen to music as they were moving. The last project that we've done is a neighborhood walkthrough that's done in the afternoons during traffic hour and in the mornings. The idea is to show our public safety officers, our county officials that run the Safe Routes program, our residents, and also the stakeholders and the city of Menlo Park what pedestrians go through when they are walking, especially our children, to try to get to school. I stand before you today as a candidate for Menlo Park City Council, and as a renter, I want to protect our community from constant turnover and outrageous rents by finding solutions to keep people in their homes. As an educator, I want to ensure our children are receiving high-quality education, city services, and resources regardless of which neighborhood they live in. As your neighbor, I want us all to be safe inside and outside of our homes by improving pedestrian safety and reducing cut-through traffic. Again, I am honored and inspired to be your candidate once again.
Thank you, Cecilia. Okay, great. Great, those are our opening statements. Now we're going to begin with questions from the audience, from all of you. And the first one is, to both of you, we'll just alternate. George, we'll start with you. What are your plans to help neighbors that are struggling with housing? What do you think about rent control, just cause eviction, tenant relocation assistance, as proposed by the Housing Commission?
Thank you for the question. And I have a lengthy discussion with Mayor Otaki about this issue earlier last week. And one of the things that come to mind is the granny unit, the second dwelling, the ADUs. How do we make it happen so that homeowners can be incentivized to build those and make it available so that we can reduce rent and make housing more available? I think in terms of solutions, we need to bring more housing and not just to restrict the current homeowners to make them harder or make them more reluctant to bring housing to the market. So in that discussion, we can reduce the initial cost of building an ADU to make sure that the plans are pre-approved so that once we start, there will be much easier, because one of the biggest things about housing is what's the cost? What is the certainty in terms of cost? So we can bring that to the front and have contractors have pre-approved prices for pre-approved plans. That way you save the cost in architecture and save the cost of construction and have certainty. And we can even work with credit unions to make sure that those are funded so that homeowners who do not have cash on hand can build those and make those units available. Now back to the issue about the Home Housing Commission. They have done very good work in terms of the relocation program. I really like the things that have mean testing so that the people who are really in need can have the support that they needed. So those are great ideas from the Housing Commission. I see Karen Grove is here. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to look at those proposals and support them once we go through some of the process.
Thank you, George. Cecilia, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, thank you.
It was a lengthy one. What are your plans to help neighbors that are struggling with housing? What do you think about rent control, just cause eviction, tenant relocation assistance as proposed by the Housing Commission?
Thank you for repeating the question. So over the past few years, I have participated in the Housing Commission's meetings, and a part of that was to help them build a stronger Housing Commission. Over the past year, the City Council has decided to expand the Housing Commission so that it has more members and that it meets monthly instead of every 4 months. The challenge is that our problems in the city of Menlo Park when it comes to displacement has existed for more than 5 to 10 years. And so trying to capture all of these challenges as far as rent control, I've been told by several council members and even community members that rent control will not pass in the city of Menlo Park. And so since rent control has a bad name, why not change its name? A landlord-tenant agreement. That way, when you enter into a contract with a tenant or a landlord, you agree upon in the beginning whether or not you're going to have a rent increase of 2% or a rent increase of 10%. I'm sorry, 2% or a rent increase of 10%. That way, you know in that contract what to expect for that first 12 months. So that's one of the challenges in Menlo Park, is that supposedly rent control will not pass. And so why not change the name of it, change the structure of it, change the way we talk about it, and also bring our landlords and our tenants to the table to discuss it. Our Housing Commission has been very effective over the past year. I trust their judgment, I trust the work that they're doing, and I believe that if we have a strong staff to support the efforts that they're doing, we can actually build a stronger community that is reflective of the values that we have. Now, as far as just cause eviction, at the moment, I can't say whether I support it or I don't support it. I'm looking at how we can make a stronger relationship between our tenants and landlords so we can have less turnover. And I know that, again, just like rent control, just cause eviction is a challenge for some of our landlords. The third was not rent control, it was the tenant relocation. The tenant relocation I do support. I had a further discussion with one of the commissioners to talk about what it meant for people who only own 1 or 2 properties that they rent and who cannot afford to pay a relocation. And I was assured that it's not set up to penalize people. It's set up to make sure that people are not displaced in our community. And we've had some challenges with investors coming in and buying up property and making rent from $900 to $1,200 a month up to about $2,000 a month, and without even making repairs. And that's what spearheaded this tenant relocation. So if we want to talk about it, we need to also include the history of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Next question. What ideas do you have to better integrate Bellhaven with the western part of Menlo Park?
First of all, let me fix my tie. It's really choking me. Yeah, I'm an engineer, so I don't want to do it when it's serious talking. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yes.
Be comfortable.
Yes, I'm sorry. One of the things that we need to make sure is that we see the same level of service in Menlo Park on both sides of Menlo Park. And that's one of the things that we need to work on to make sure of. Last week, Mayor Otaki at the State of the City speech talked about how to allocate specific funding for the library in Bellhaven. So I have talked to him and make sure that he can allocate the hotel tax from the Neo Hotel to make sure to dedicate that funding for the library construction here in Bellhaven, make sure that we have the services that are on par with the other side of Menlo Park. At the same time, our transportation issues, we are on the other side of 101, and we have a lot of people here that's having a problem going to the other side of the city. So one of the programs that I propose for transportation is to give seniors the free rides for Lyft or Uber, so that between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. they can go to the other side of the city to participate in those events, and they can come to ours to participate in our events at the same time. By the way, this is not a pipe dream. So for the election day, both Uber and Lyft are offering free rides to voters to go to the polling booths. So these are some of the things that we can talk to them and make it happen for the people who live here, so that they have the mobility to go participate in the events on the other side of Menlo Park, and they can come there to us to participate in our events if we have the same level of facilities. Thank you.
With both the Bellhaven visioning process and Connect Menlo. The city of Menlo Park needs to take what they have already gathered, the information, the research over the past 20 years, and actually implement it. So integrating us into the rest of Menlo Park, I don't think is a problem. I think the problem is that none of the information that has been gathered has been utilized. So I think that's where it needs to begin. I know that if we continue to bring consultants in to tell us what we need, that people are going to continue to get frustrated. And so what we need to do as a city is definitely look at leadership when it comes to implementing what has already been researched. We have the Bellhaven Action Plan. We have Connect Menlo. We have the general plan. We have the Bellhaven Visioning. And I'm sure there's a few more studies that have been done. We are working on BNLAC, the Bellhaven Neighborhood Library Study. We also have one additional study, the Bellhaven Traffic Calming. So if we actually take all of these consultants and actually implement them, there's no need to integrate us into the city because we're already a part of it. Since we are a district, now people know that we're a part of the city. So again, with leadership, that's with integrity and values, that will no longer be an issue.
Okay, Cecilia, my apologies. It's your turn to start the next question because we're trying to alternate. Everyone shakes their head. Yeah. Okay, so there has been a lot of news about Facebook conflicts. How do you see this affecting your ability on the council, if at all?
As far as what do you mean this?
Facebook conflicts.
So I don't have a Facebook conflict. So I don't know who asked that question. I don't have a Facebook conflict.
Okay. George?
Oh, all right. Well,
I wonder if I could just get a clarification from the questioner. Do you mean personal conflicts or do you mean conflicts in general from Facebook? Or, I don't know.
It's not my question, but there's one candidate in another district who works at Facebook.
I see.
So maybe that's it. Not my question.
right. The issue has been raised to the city attorney's office, has been reported by both the Almanac and the Palo Alto Daily Post. I think the issue that city attorney have mentioned is that should Ms. Taylor be elected, and there may have to ask for the FTPC, the state agency, to clarify whether or not she can vote on issues that are related to Facebook. And I think it would be, last time on the debate, I have talked about this a little bit, and I said it would be great if she can have that clarification before the election, so that the state can say, yes, she can vote on those issues. Because the worst thing that could happen is that if we have a representative who cannot vote on issues related to Facebook, then we will have no representation in this neighborhood. And that means people in Sharon Heights and in downtown is going to be making the decision for us. And that's something that I don't want to see happen.
George, you'll start with this next answer. What would you like to see done to improve traffic flow to and from Bellhaven? That's a big.
Oh, I'm very passionate about this. I think that's one of the reasons I'm running. Since 2010, I've been proposing a proposal to extend the VTA from Moffett all the way to this side of 101 to us. Now, again, I've done my research, I've done some homework, I'm open-minded. Last time, Ms. Taylor talked about the southern access route, so I go into that option and take a look at it. That option is to have a four-lane highway from the outside of Mountain all the way on the Palo Alto side, all the way to Alviso, back to 237. Now, never mind bringing in another 237. Imagine 237 on Bayfront. That's what's something is being proposed. But even if that's a good idea, are we going to expect the state who is spending billions of dollars restoring the marshland? They are restoring the marshland outside of Palo Alto, spending billions of dollars. Do we expect the state to spend billions of dollars to build a highway on the marshland that they just spent billions of dollars restoring? So I don't see how that's going to work. So that's one. Now back to my idea about the light rail. I think transit is the way to go going forward. Now we can have light rail in Moffett going north on the east side of 101 through East Palo Alto to in front of Facebook, connect to Caltrain and Redwood City, go across to Fremont, link it to AC, which will go all the way to Stockton, and then go down with Peters and link it up to Levi Stadium. There will be a complete light rail loop around the South Bay. And the best way to get people off the roads is to give them a good alternative in terms of transit so that they do not have to drive.
I believe that the traffic flow in and outside of the Bellhaven neighborhood, first of all, needs to be addressed by enforcement. We have zero enforcement in our community from the police department, and so we have a simple sign here on Chilco and Hamilton that's not even enforced from 3:30 to 7. So I think we need to start with enforcement. The other piece we need to remember is that our neighborhood was not built for the 7,000 cars that enter in and out of it from the community members, nor the tens of thousands of cars that drive through Willow Road every day. So those are things that need to be addressed. The other piece is we have shuttle systems that are ran by our corporate neighbors, Facebook being one of them, Tarleton being another one, that can actually open up their shuttle system so that the community can use it, so that we are no longer trapped by traffic. We have the same access that they do. A part of the traffic is being caused by their shuttle systems, so why not open it? And we can create a robust shuttle system in the city of Menlo Park by making it electric, continuing to have it free at charge because it's free currently, and just making sure that it is equitable so that it connects with the rest of the city and also with neighboring cities. We need to have access to also the H train, access to Amtrak, Caltrains, and also to Redwood City. Right now, we are forced to drive because there is limited public transportation, and the one bus that comes in and out of our neighborhood does not happen frequently enough, nor does it have enough connections.
Thank you. Cecilia, you go first with this question again. What will you do to attract and retain city staff?
I believe that currently the City of Menlo Park staff is undervalued. We have staff members here that have worked for the City of Menlo Park anywhere from 10 to 15 years, but you wouldn't know that because they're not the ones receiving the proclamations. The staff that are leaving that have been here 5 years or less are the ones receiving the proclamations. So we need to invest in our staff by, one, making their thoughts and their ideas and their values a priority. The City of Menlo Park has effective employees. We are just not taking the time to actually listen to them and implement their ideas. I recently have spoken to people who have been here more than, 10 years, and then also employees that have been here less than 5 years. And the employees that have been here less than 5 years, my question for them is, whenever you feel like you want to leave, come and talk to someone. Don't just leave. I think we need to invest in our staff. We need to make it a priority. New leadership can make it a priority to make sure that our staff is retained and that we invest in them and we take the time to listen to them. Because I think that our city has an opportunity to do better, but if we don't look at staff retention, none of the projects that we want to see will ever happen. Thank you.
In terms of staff retention, I first want to say a few words to our police department and thank them for the work that they do. One of the things that I did is that when I'm working precincts, one of the afternoons, I go to the police department and say, hey, are you enforcing the low left turn signal on Chilco and Hamilton? And they go out there that afternoon, and then they ticketed at least 8 persons that I have seen. So they do go out and do the work when you have leadership going out there and prompt them to do it. So I have done that. This morning, I was riding along with the police, and they have issued 2 tickets related to traffic. One is a gentleman that are talking on the phone, he got a ticket. And the other one is running through a stop sign, he got a ticket. So yes, we need to appreciate the staff that we have. And I agree that we need to appreciate the work that they do. To retain those staff, we need to tell them when they do a good job, we need to, like I said, pat them on the back and say, keep doing those good jobs. At the same time, we do have a staff shortage, and that's something that we need to do to hire local. I have said this last time. It's something that we can do. It's a great idea to go to younger people and say, how can I train you so that you can work in the city? And also, it's time to talk to people who have perhaps already retired from our city department and talk to them and say, would you want to come back and work for us again? I have run into people who are both sides who want to work for the city and need to create programs and pathways for them to do that.
How can the city encourage more grocery stores to come to Bellhaven?
I guess I am. All right. So, first of all, when I was on the Bellhaven Community Foundation in 2011, I worked with Carolyn and Clark to make sure that we have good options right here. At the time, they're planning the 777 Hamilton. We try our best to make sure that they may be a grocery store on the first level. That unfortunately did not happen because at the time the council was out of priorities, I suppose. And also at the time, we're also working to make sure that we get a credit union at Bellhaven. So those are things that we have done, and I have experience in how to get it done, how not to do it. So once elected, I want to make sure that we get that. And now, Facebook tried to build a Willow Village, and they are promising us that they are going to bring that in after the Willow Village project is completed. I think that is not right. They have promised, made that promise on phase 2 when they have the new Constitution campus done. They have made that promise. They need to fulfill that promise before they build the Willow Village project.
Cecilia?
Currently in the neighborhood, we have 2 stores. One is Mi Tierra Linda, and the second is Celesta. And most of the people in here, I'm not sure if you shop there, those of you who live in the neighborhood. But I look at doing outreach with our current grocery store to find out if, one, they can expand their selection so that more people in the community can use it, because I personally have to travel out of the neighborhood for certain things. And the second is, we have a Chamber of Commerce of the city of Menlo Park. The community members here who own businesses do not feel welcome, and so I know that there is a Chamber of Commerce in the neighboring city. I'm not sure if they participate in that, but I believe that we need to do more outreach and make sure that our business owners, especially the grocery stores, feel included in the community so that we can start addressing some of our smaller problems. I do not believe that we need to wait for reinvestment in our community to make it change. I believe that we can make some effort ourselves. And a part of that means open the door and let these business owners know that, one, that we care that they're in our community. 2, we would like to have a conversation with them about how they operate in our community. 3, that we are a welcoming community. So thank you.
Okay. And Cecilia, you'll start with this. We have 2 more questions in reference to the Facebook conflict.
Okay.
Maybe you want to respond to what George had to say, but in terms of what the audience, 2 people in the audience, as a matter of fact, have mentioned that Ms. Taylor was cleared by the Menlo Park City Attorney of any conflict regarding Facebook. No conflict was reported in both papers, and another audience member was suggesting that that Ms. Taylor should not have to recuse herself from Facebook issues. But what would your response be?
So my response is, from the conversation that I had with Bill McClure and also the FPPC, is that I will not have to recuse myself on any issue because there is not a conflict. And so an anonymous person reported it to the FPPC, not knowing that I had already reached out to the FPPC several months ago. And so it's very important to have correct information and make sure that you're informed. So there is zero conflict for me once I'm elected, so you do not have to worry about me not being able to represent this neighborhood. It's not an issue.
I always want to talk about traffic more than anything else, traffic and safety and housing solutions. So this is brought to me by the newspapers, and I have read them. And I do have a concern about that, but I'm going to leave it at that, and you can always read the newspapers and read what they have said.
And just once again, I'd like to encourage the audience to remain quiet until we are done with tonight's
Mic's off.
forum.
Yeah, the mic is not
Not on,
working.
is it? Has it been on at all?
No, it's just on and off.
Okay.
Can you hear better?
Oh, big
Yes.
difference. Okay, once again, no applause until the end of the forum. Thank you so much. Let me see, we start with George here.
Sure.
What is the portion of the Menlo Park budget dedicated to pension payments, which is often expressed as an unfunded liability?
I've talked to the audit committee about this issue, and it's a very important issue for me because I have been talking about making sure that this issue is taken care of. Because that, if we do have economic downturn, that's something that we need to worry about. Right now, we have a city surplus. We are dedicating about 20% of that towards the future pension liabilities. I think that need to stay that way or increase to make sure that in the future, it does not affect services within the city.
My understanding of the unfunded liabilities is that it's the accumulation of the liabilities that we owe out in pensions. If anyone has looked at the rate that Menlo Park pays for its higher paid workers, it is well over $160,000 a year. And when you retire out, what I'm finding is that a lot of our employees that retire are also coming back as a consultant. And so Menlo Park does have a huge liability when it comes to unfunded pension. They have also had, I believe it was a grand jury investigation because the accumulation could eventually break the city. And so it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. For the past couple of years, I have been attending the Finance and Audit Committee so that I can learn more about it. And our commission, unfortunately, does not have a lot of members of the community on there because it is a difficult subject to understand. And so it's definitely something that's on the priority list for the City Council and definitely for our newly electeds.
Cecilia, what ideas do you have for funding Bellhaven Library remodel?
I say go to the people that live in our neighborhood, our corporate. I say go to Facebook in Tarleton. We can look at those projects. We can look at our TOT. I know that the Bellhaven community, there was supposed to be a Bellhaven Amenities Fund, which I have yet to see it, which means that all of the money that is made in our community, the revenue goes back to the city, and I do not see the reinvestment. So the first thing we need to do, I believe, is create a Bellhaven Amenities Fund and make a part of the TOT taxes to go into that fund. And also the city has, I believe it's called a undesignated fund. The last time I checked, it was somewhere around $7 million. The city of Menlo Park could actually start that Bellhaven Amenities Fund with the money, with some of that money. That's, I believe, where it needs to start. We also need to make sure that our development agreements include things that are reinvestments that are visible in our neighborhood. The Facebook project, the development agreement was worth somewhere around $10 million. A very small percentage of that came back to the community. And I blame that on leadership.
I have talked to a number of current city council members about the project and how we can fund it. There are a number of ways that we can do it right now. The capital improvement project, we do have some funding on that. Also, at the same time, we have the fire station where the fire district wants to buy it from us, and that might bring in the initial capital necessary to get the project begin. And at the same time, we have the NIA Hotel, which we do have the TOT tax coming from that. As I have mentioned earlier, That's amount to about 1 to 1.5 million per year that we can dedicate it for the library project. And I think we have a clear path forward with funding in mind.
Do you support Menlo Park Fire Protection District exploring its services in the Bellhaven area? Expanding? Oh, I'm sorry, expanding. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Do you support Menlo Park Fire Protection District expanding its services in the Bellhaven area? George.
One of the 5 board members, Rob Salano, have endorsed my campaign. I've talked to him extensively about this issue. And the thing is that they need to do their impact studies to make sure that they understand that we have a growing neighborhood. We have different needs right now. We have more traffic. And at some hours of the day, it's very difficult for fire truck to come here to help. And that's something that's very relevant to the safety of this community. So they need to have their impact study done. And we work with them on that to make sure that they consider the needs of our changing community and to make sure that we have enough services and resources on this side of 101 to respond to needs. This morning, as part of the ride along with the police, they are doing an active shooter training in Facebook. Something like that might well happen. And at that time, we need to have a lot of resources on this side. So that's some of the things that we need to make sure that both the fire district and the police and even the sheriff will understand the needs of our neighborhood and make sure those resources are available when there are issues that need to be handled and taken care of.
Recently, the fire department tried to expand their services without including the community in that dialogue. And they were looking at using eminent domain to take portions of people's property. And this community stood up against it. And one of the challenges that the fire department is having now is coming back to the community to talk about what are the next steps. So if they want to get anything out of the community to help better protect us as far as expanding services, they need to make sure that they include the community in that discussion. They need to do outreach, as opposed to bringing a consultant in to come up with an idea that the community didn't support. I do know that there was an idea brought to the table about having a Manhattan style where you had part of the station in one area and another part not too far away. I know that the fire district has tried to buy property in the neighborhood. I believe it was a storage place that they were looking at, other places. I believe that there is a lot of land out there that Facebook owns, and so maybe a discussion with Facebook needs to be had, because a lot of the calls that they're getting are for Facebook. They're not for people in the community. And so we need to look at better solutions, and also looking at the community to find out what the community wants to see and what the community is willing to accept from the fire district. The most important thing is that our community does have access to emergency services.
When or what will you do to address the halt of multiple high-rise hotels and increase in more traffic? I think the bottom line is stopping cut-through traffic. I think that's what it is.
I said this earlier, is that our community was not designed for the number of cars that travel in and out of it. We have neighborhood traffic, community members that have cars. Then we have Uber, Lyft, rideshare that stop in the middle of the street to pick people up. And then we have UPS, FedEx, the other delivery services, On Track. And then we have all of the different modes of transportation that Facebook has. On demand, their shuttles, the large shuttles, the small shuttles, their small on-demand vehicles. And so one of the challenges that we just need to step up and say no more cars. No more trip caps. There is a rumor that Facebook has gone over the trip cap, so we need to look into it and see if they have. We also need to look at some other avenues. There is zero enforcement at this stop sign on a regular basis. And people that drive and walk in the community that live here know that the enforcement is not there. About 2 weeks ago, the Highway Patrol and Menlo Park Police and a few other police departments partnered so that they can do more traffic enforcement. But I know that the Menlo Park Police Department enforces traffic in the Willows neighborhood on a regular basis to make sure no one is making a right turn onto Willow. And so we need to look at enforcement as a part of the solution. If there are 8 new police officers headed to the Menlo Park Police Force, then there's enough officers to do enforcement. That's the beginning.
So here's a two-part question. One is about traffic, and the other one is about cut-through traffic. So there's two separate ones. The number one thing that I talk about for some time is that there are technology available to make sure that we can bridge a last mile solution between the transit hubs to our hotels and destinations. Those things need to happen. And as somebody who is in the technology industry, that's something that we can do right now. And it can create jobs right here in this local area for people who want to be, for example, drone delivery, talk about the FedEx trucks and UPS trucks. There are available technology to do that on days and time of the day that are safe for people that we can do and create jobs. And also we need to have the last mile solution to make sure that people don't have to drive from the airport to the hotels. If there are ways where they can take Caltrans and then take a shuttle or a Uber service from that station to the hotel, that's going to reduce the traffic that we have. Back to the enforcement. First of all, we do need to hire local police officers to make sure that we are fully staffed to have enough people on deck to enforce those laws. At the same time, you'll be amazed how effective it is. You just go there and say, hey, why don't you enforce those laws? I've been there twice, and every time I go there, they will be going out there right after I left to enforce the laws. I know it's not perfect solution, but sometimes you just have to go there and say, hey, why are you not enforcing the low left turn laws right there? And you show up, and you know what? Magically, they will do it.
George, what is your position on a living wage in Menlo Park?
One of the things that I want to talk about is that 2 years ago, I decided to learn more about the minimum wage. So I did something that many people probably have not done. I actually applied for a job at Ross at San Carlos and get a job for $12 an hour and want to find out what it is like. Because the best way to learn that is to be there. What I've learned is that people are smart. They know what they're doing. Let me give you some examples. A coworker named Russell, he only worked there for 2 days. And he buys things for 40% discount or employee discount, sell it online and make $2,000 a month. He's very smart. Another lady who lived half the year in Hawaii and comes back half a month, she had great flexibility, come in and work anytime she wanted, at $12 an hour, get the ticket. She's smart, she knows what she's doing. And then the other lady who just come in from Ukraine, new immigrant, doesn't know English, comes to work. In 2 years, she's now the front-end supervisor. She knows that that job gets her the experience necessary. So when we're talking about this, we need to understand people who take those jobs are smart. They know what they're doing. They don't need us to tell them what they can and cannot do.
I support having a living wage in Menlo Park. I know that the county's living wage is around $18 an hour. And I know that the city of Menlo Park has a job on the books that pays $11 an hour. That's a huge discrepancy. I believe before we can have a city living wage for the entire city of Menlo Park, we need to start off with the municipal living wage. At least $15 an hour for the city of Menlo Park, because McDonald's pays more than our city does. I know that also that there are some small businesses that cannot afford to pay $15 an hour. So I'm not sure how that is going to work, but I know that people cannot work for $11, $12, $13 an hour here in the Bay Area, and a living wage is a necessity. And I know there is a big push to have $15 an hour by 2020, but I think that we can do it sooner than that, especially with our city, Menlo Park. We need to set a higher standard and let people know that we believe in the value of the people that work for the city of Menlo Park by paying them at least $15 an hour.
Cecilia, what plans would you propose for our community's lack of high-quality education?
Fortunately, this discussion is already ongoing in this community and has been for many, many years. And so one of the ideas that I had is that we can either, if the community wants to create its own district, that we can look at ways around that as far as getting higher quality education in our community. I know that continuing to be a part of Ravenswood School District is no longer an option. I'm a product of Ravenswood School District, so I know it's no longer an option. It has been a problem for over 40 years. And if other areas of Menlo Park have been successful at annexing out of the school district, let's ask ourselves why. Why were they allowed out? And that's the Willows neighborhood, that's Suburban Park. They were all allowed out of the city, out of the Ravenswood School District. And so I believe with the number of schools that we have here, if we have a strong elementary education program, our students can go to school from preschool all the way up to college in the neighborhood. And I believe that can be done by creating our own school district. The other option would be to become a part of the city of Menlo Park, well, not the city of Menlo Park, but Menlo Park School District. That would be the other option since they're already established. But thinking about the number of people that live in this community, the number of students that are in this community, I believe that creating our own district needs to be a viable option that we look at.
I have two kids, and education is obviously very important to me. So one of the things that I have done is I've done my research, done my homework, and find out what does it take to take us out of the Ravenswood School District. I see Kurt Skinner right there. Hello, Kurt. So it's going to have to be begin at the school district level. They are the prime movers of things related to education, not the city. The city do not have jurisdiction over it. After you have it begin at the school district level, you have to go through the county board of education, and then you have to go through state agency for approval. It is a very lengthy process. It's doable, but you have to begin at the school board level. You have to have a buy-in at the school board. So if you are very interested in this issue, you need to talk to the candidate who are running for school district right now and see where they stand on this issue, where they stand on giving us the freedom and independence away from that district. And also, we need to consider having an alliance from Belhaven to run for school district so that we will have a strong say in that. Unfortunately, we don't at this point. Unfortunately, we are kind of the orphan of that Ravenswood district. I'm sorry to say that. But that's where we need to have action from the school board level, and that's where we need to see action happen.
The general plan update that came out of Connect Menlo was approved by City Council to rezone the M2 to allow for the amenities that Belhaven asked for. Do you support this update?
That solution have been there for some time, and I think there need to be update on that, especially with the Facebook Willow Village project being on deck. We need to look into that. We have right now more residents on also Haven side as well. I like what they have done to make sure that some of the rezoning happens, and we have what we need in terms of amenities, in terms maybe going forward, not just grocery stores, but credit unions, financial services, childcare services, and education services that are related to that. So I do support that in general, but there are things that we need to revisit to make sure that it fits changing needs.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. It was a longer one. The general plan update that came out of Connect Menlo was approved by the City Council to rezone the M2 to allow for the amenities that Belhaven asked for. Do you support this update?
So the update, from my understanding, would have to do more about the square footage of having more development happening in our community. And that I do not support, having more development in our community. What I do support is creating a Belhaven Amenities Fund so that we will actually see what our neighborhood will have. We haven't seen enough reinvestment in our community from all the development that is surrounding us. And if I see a new painted crosswalk, that's not enough. If I see a new light pole on the corner of New Bridge in Willow, that's not enough. We need to have visible reinvestment, and the only way to do that is to actually have a Belhaven Amenities Fund so that you can see how much money is going in there, and we can see how much money we can use to reinvest in our community. It has been suggested that some of the Belhaven amenities should cover our cost of education. I don't see education as an amenity. I see it as a right. And so we need to look at what our community has already asked for, what our community was promised, and actually see it actually brought into fruition. So a Belhaven Amenities Fund, and I am not supporting any more upzoning for our community until we look at some problems that we already have.
Okay, and Cecilia, this goes to you as well. Do you care about our immigrant and low-income residents? How do you plan to support them?
The answer is yes, I do care. I did support the sanctuary city when it came in front of the city council. Also, as far as our low-income residents, the organization I created, Belhaven Action, has worked to get more of our community members on the below market rate list, because that list moves very, very, very slow, because there has been less than, I'd say, 50 BMR units over the past few years that have been accessible to our community. We are also helping people to sign up for Section 8 as well. There are a lot of challenges that when you look at what low-income people are facing because they have been left out of the equation. And one of the challenges that we need to take on is to continue to do community outreach and find out about connecting services. There are a lot of things that exist now in the city of East Palo Alto where we are lumped in because when we are looked at, we're looked at as a city as a whole. 94025 is looked at as a wealthy area. And so some services don't reach us. There are seniors here that need to replace their windows and can't because of the zip code. They're looked at as not being needed, and they are. And so one of the challenges is to continue to do outreach. And that was one of the purposes of the Connect Menlo process, from my understanding, and also the Belhaven visioning. So these are not any new issues, but I believe there are definitely issues that we can resolve together.
I'm an immigrant coming to the U.S. in 1992. At the time I come with my mother, my dad cannot come here because the Chinese government does not allow him to travel. So me and my dad, my mom, have a single studio apartment in San Francisco on top of Stockton Tunnel, right in the heart of Chinatown for $600. And the two of us work really hard. I actually have jobs when I'm going to school. My mother actually helped cleaning people's houses in different places in Newbury, even in Hillsborough. She lived there and cleaned houses. At the same time, I really have to say this about my mother. She get a embassy Microsoft certified engineer license when she's 50 years old and got a job at a company. And she's my role model on that. She's willing to do any job to get through. I understand a lot of immigrant families are like that. I see those struggles. So we were lucky enough to have enough money when I get my own job as well, to get a small house in San Bruno for 2-bedroom. And when I get married and have my kids, I choose, it's not enough room, I choose Belhaven as a place to raise my family. So this is a place I can feel at home with many other immigrants and make sure that those services are available to them as well.
Do you support dedicating city-owned land for low-income and very low-income affordable housing for families, question mark, downtown near transit, question mark?
In general, yes, I do. I need to look at the specific proposals to make sure that are consistent with the looks and feel of the neighborhood, so that they do not become on itself a separate part of the city. The city need to be consistent, integrated, and the resources and services will be consistent to other neighborhoods as well. So I do support transit-oriented development. I do support teacher housing so that people who are teaching in this community could stay here and also have time after school to tutor the kids and make sure that make times available for the students. So those are projects that I do support, and we need to look at the projects to make sure that those projects bring benefits to our neighborhood as well, and also make sure that those projects are well connected to transit solutions so that they do not add to traffic.
Yes, I do support having some city land used for low-income housing, especially near downtown, where there are public services, there are city services, there's public transportation, there's quality education. There's also an opportunity to parlay some type of amenity for newly hired employees to live closer to the city of Menlo Park, so that way there won't be any trip caps. They could actually walk to work. But I do support having low-income housing, affordable housing on city property.
What ideas do you have to encourage Facebook to be a good neighbor? Cecilia, I'm sorry.
I believe we need to amend the development agreement. I think the development agreement, we're missing several aspects, which is why we do not see a lot of reinvestment in our community. I believe that we need to hold Facebook accountable. I believe that Facebook is approachable. If they signed a development agreement and they want to expand their services, I mean, look how quickly they're building in our neighborhood. I believe that we need to amend the development agreement to include things that weren't there. The problem was with the development agreement, it said that it was to pay for the Bellhaven traffic calming study. Why after they started building? Why wasn't that done before? So I believe that those are the things that need to happen with Facebook, is to amend the agreement and start doing reinvestment in our community first and not last.
I believe the best way to talk to companies such as Facebook and other companies as well is to make sure that it's a win-win solution for both sides. For example, right now Facebook is trying to hire a lot of people and they are looking for talent. And they have a website, accessfb.com. A lot of people do not know about it. I actually just met a young gentleman this morning and he did not know about that website. We need to make sure that people know about those programs. It's for East Palo Alto, Eastern Menlo Park, and also North Fair Oaks. But we need to tell people about that to make sure that they have those jobs. And also, one of the things that I think is a blind spot for Facebook is that they're too much into hiring. Yeah. I don't know if they are hiring, they're right now only hiring people who are under 25 or under 30, because they look at people and say, I want to hire someone young, train them, and they work for 40 years. Nobody does that anymore. So I really encourage them to reach out to people who are 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, that are looking for career change. Now, you might not think that they can be programmers. They can be trained. I'm a programmer. It's not that difficult. My mother, like I said, got a MSc license at age 50. So there are things that can be done and train them, because to keep people, long-term residents here, is to make sure that head of households have good paying, respectable jobs so that they can stay in this neighborhood. And that's some of the things that I really would like to work with Facebook to make sure that they create job opportunities to people locally. And those jobs that they actually need to hire anyway.
How will you enforce or expand Menlo Park's policies protecting undocumented immigrants from the federal government? George.
I talked to like I said, I have to ride along with the police officer this morning, and I talked to Officer Maricel about this. He's born and raised in East Palo Alto, and he said, look, right now we have enough on hands. We need to make sure that we do the jobs that the city wants us to do, like enforcing the traffic signals and whatnot, to do those jobs first, to make sure that we have a good relationship with the residents and make those quality of life issues done first. I don't believe it's our job to enforce federal law at the city level.
From my understanding with Sanctuary City is that the City of Menlo Park Police Department doesn't enforce it. So as far as expanding it, I don't think that at this point, I'm not seeing a reason why we need to expand it. If there needs to be more community outreach to find out what that actually means as far as expanding it. But my understanding is that the City of Menlo Park, the police department does not enforce any of the immigration rules, from my understanding.
how will you address racial profiling by Menlo Park Police?
This is a systemic issue, especially in Menlo Park. I've had my own experiences here in the city 30 years ago. My family had the same problem in the city. It is something that is embedded in the system, and it's something that we need to talk about and actually do something about. And I'm not sure if having cameras on a police officer is the solution, because it isn't working. There was a goal with our last chief to have 0 complaints. I don't believe that's a solution. I believe that we need to continue talking about it, and most importantly, we need to include the community who is being profiled. On any given day, when I see someone pulled over, it is a person of color in this community. It is not the people doing cut-through traffic. And those are the discussions that we need to have. We have a new police chief, and I believe that he is approachable, and I believe that there are also other organizations that already do programs within a police department. The problem that I see is that no one wants to say, yes, we have a problem here. It's the community who's being affected that said it's a problem. The police department needs to acknowledge that it's an issue. That's the challenge. And I believe with our new police chief that the opportunity is there. And I believe if the community members who are being profiled would actually file a complaint, then that would give some type of statistics and also would leave a paper trail so that we can learn how to do better by the city of Menlo Park. Thank you.
Well, like I said, I do my homework and do my research, so I did go to the police department and say, can I ride along with you and see how you do your job on a daily basis? I've done this twice, once at night between 8 and 12. So at that ride along is usually on the other side of 101. It's on downtown because we actually have a fewer complaints on this side right now. It's a good thing that we don't have a lot of calls to the police from this side at night. So we have issues on there. And I talk to the police officers. They are, by and large, look like the community in that we talk to. So like I said, the officer this morning, Maricel, he's grew up in East Palo Alto. We are going around in Bellhaven this morning, and he drive by his uncle's house and say, hey, this is where my uncle lived. So that is the good thing that we need to keep going, and that's we need to hire police officer locally who knows the neighborhood, knows the people there, and say, hey, that's my high school buddy. That's my cousin's big best friend. Those are the things that we need to encourage the city to do more. We do have a shortage of officers, and we need to make sure that we have programs to hire officers from our neighborhoods, so that when they're doing policing, they understand the neighborhood as much as they understand their family.
Have you ever taken a position on an issue and then over time changed your position? What was it? This needs a little thought.
Well, let's take a look at the issue about minimum wage, for example. Like I said, I'm very sympathetic. I have 10 jobs that are way low income pay. The first job I have is $3.75 stuffing envelopes. The one lesson that I learned from that is that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So for that time, I'm looking into that issue and I'm open-minded. So the way that I approach a problem is to actually be a part of it. So I say, I want to get a job that's at $12 an hour or $11 an hour, and then find out who are the co-workers, who are they doing, what are their challenges in their lives, how can we better help them. So I approach a problem by going into it, not being ideological and say, that's not going to work and this is not going to work. I want to find out the human side of it and find out how best to solve those problems. And I think that's how I approach problems in the past, and that's how I'm going to approach problems in the future. I am always open-minded.
Initially, when I started attending the Bellhaven School Site Council meetings a couple years ago, it was with the idea to help support the district, which is the Ravenswood School District. After those 2 years of observing what was happening, I changed my position as far as supporting the district and started supporting what the community wanted to see. and looking at either annexing and going into the Menlo Park School District or creating our own district. It was a little frustrating because as a teacher, you want to do the best you can for your community. And without having a great community school, it makes it challenging for people in the community to actually have a good quality of life. I did a ride-along with one of my friends when she dropped her 3 children off, and she had to go to 2 schools, which was almost 2 hours. And then just imagine doing that every day, and then you have to do it again in the evening, because the bus system didn't work for my friend. And so I did my best to support the Ravenswood School District, but after observing at the school site council what was happening, having a lack of support for the current principal, the current vice principal, and even some of the teachers, I came to the conclusion that the best thing for us to do is to get out of the district.
What have you done for our community and neighborhood that qualify you as a candidate? And Cecilia.
Well, besides qualifying through the San Mateo County Elections Office, I spent the past 2 years creating an organization that would help support the needs of the community that wasn't being dealt with by the city of Menlo Park. And I'll speak specifically around housing. The city of Menlo Park has contracted with an organization called Hello Housing. Hello Housing manages the below market rate list. And there are people that work for the city of Menlo Park that do not know it exists. And that's because Hello Housing does not do any outreach. And so Belhaven Action does outreach. We started off at the Menlo Park Senior Center because we saw that the need was there the most. And that's also because of the new Sequoia Belhaven apartments for seniors that opened up, and a lot of the seniors that applied for it never got any feedback. They never got a letter saying you are X number on the list or that you don't qualify. And so we began doing a letter writing campaign to find out why they never got any confirmation that their application was received. That was one project. The second one I already spoke about, that was the breakfast at the bus stop. Students that ride the bus, that use the Tinsley program, are on the bus one way for up to 90 minutes to get to school. By the time they get there, they are hungry and there is no food offered to them. The third that we did was the naming of the park after Carl Clark, a community servant and a man that deserved to be honored by the city of Menlo Park. So those are 3 things that I did that I feel qualify me to run for District 1.
A couple of things that I mentioned earlier is that, first of all, I have been on the board in San Bruno before 10, 11 years ago before I moved to Menlo Park. So I have know how to deal with the city in terms of getting funds, working with the city, working with different state and local regional agencies to make funds available for projects. So that's one of the things that's very essential. So once he goes in, I know the Brown rules and know all those things to make a city council work. Second thing is that as part of the community foundation, we have to make sure that we are looking to make sure that we have a strong voice in the city of Menlo Park. So make sure that we, at the time Carolyn Cox running for city council, I'm helping her to do that. Now more recently, we have a mini grant program for 2 years in a row. I've been helping that program to make sure that city residents get money to fix their front yards. So make sure they have a good curbside appeal. So it's up to from $500 to $1,000 to $1,500. We are going around educating people how they can make use of that money to make sure that they have a great front yard to increase neighborliness between the neighbors. Also, on the Sister City Commission, I'm working with Assistant City Manager Clay right there in the back to make sure that we have students going to Japan to expand their horizons. We have 2 out of 10 students this year coming from Belhaven. So we are making sure that our kids are represented on those trips to make sure that they also have that same opportunity to see the world as people on the other side.
How have you been involved in city government? How would you improve the process to make the city council more effective?
One of the things that we can do to make sure that it's more effective is that Right now, the city council meetings are very long. People have been there, all the way to 12 p.m. It's a great sacrifice for people. Now, not everybody is interested in every single subject. Now, what you can do is to sign up on issue that you care about, and when that issue comes up, we will bring you that particular video to you, so that instead of sitting through the whole city council meeting, we can do that. So you can say, okay, I'm interested in traffic. Bring me that particular video, alert me when that issue happens. Instead of having to sit through the whole city council meeting, you can just take the portion of it that you are interested in. And you can sign up for different things. You can talk about education, you can be traffic, you can be Menlo Park, Bellhaven related, library related, so that way it's much more accessible for people who have jobs, have families, to participate in the process. And that can be done very simply with a lot of application we already have, and also have ways to just call you up and text you and say, hey, we have this meeting that are concerning that particular issue that you're interested in. That way will make the barrier of entry easier for people to participate and to make it easier for them to be a part of the process.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, hang on one second. How have you been involved in city government? How would you improve the process to make the council more effective?
Thank you. I've been involved in the past couple years since I ran for council in 2016 by attending the council meetings. Yes, they go until 1 a.m. sometimes. Very frustrating. The second is attending the Housing Commission, Complete Streets, Library, and also the Parks and Rec Commission meeting. That way I can understand, 1, what their work plan is, 2, how to support them, and 3, if there are any initiatives from this community, I could bring it to the commission and actually move through the process. That was how we were able to name the park after Mr. Carl Clark. As far as improve it, I look at staff retention as a part of that. One of the challenges with the commission is that if you don't have enough staff members supporting what the commission is doing, then the commission isn't able to be effective. So staff retention has to be a part of that discussion. Leadership in Menlo Park and integrity is also a challenge. There was one council member that wanted to bring a transparency policy. I believe it was called a sunshine policy. And I believe that the city of Menlo Park does need that, but something more important would be an ethics commission so that the city can actually run ethically. Again, integrity and leadership has been a challenge over the past few years, and there is definitely improvement needed.
What changes can make better, safe routes to schools?
The first change, I believe, is that we need to start hiring consultants who are local. From my understanding, the city hired an out-of-the-state safe routes consultant. And so that consultant contacted Bellhaven Action, and they want Bellhaven Action to do their work, which that's not what we're going to do. We need to advocate that the city of Menlo Park, when they hire consultants that are locally. I know that the purchasing policy was just updated so that we actually can do that. And so that would be the first step to look at safe routes. The other piece is that they've already created, I believe Jim Wilson created safe routes for parents. And so looking at work that's already been done, the County of San Mateo's coordinator for safe routes as well has a lot of information. The challenge is that none of that has been implemented. There are statistics that show that students of color are hit more often than students that are not of color. And those statistics are only made relevant if you are engaged in the Safe Routes programs. The other piece is that one of our schools that are part of the Ravenswood School District in the Willows is not included because it's in a wealthier neighborhood. So some information is lost because of where the school is located. But we definitely have to make sure that we hire from the city of Menlo Park, that we hire locally to deal with issues, especially when it comes to children's safety.
One of the things I have done as part of as chairman of the San Bruno Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Advisory Committee is to create our own program for safe routes to school called Walking School Bus. We find ways to encourage both students and parents to participate with incentives so that if a student can collect, walk to school X number of times, they will get coupons for shops in town, movie tickets and things like that, so that they have an incentive to participate. And also we need to hire locally to make sure we have crossing guards locally. We have had to work with the police department to make sure that certain intersections will have police presence at certain times when the kids are going to school. To make sure those programs work, is need to be involved both parents, kids, and the city as well. So those are things that I have the prior experience to make that work, to bring all those different puzzle pieces to the same puzzle, to make sure that the kids are excited to do it. The parents have, it's easy for them to participate and easy for them to be a part of that. And also the city can bring in resources to hire the crossing guards and to bring in, to make sure that there are police presence necessary when it's needed.
Okay, we have talked about traffic throughout the evening, but this question is specifically, what suggestions do you have for improving public transportation? George.
I heard the whole YouTube video on YouTube that talks about that. One of the problems is the last mile problem. Let me tell you my first job. I get my first job, I lived in San Bruno at the time. I have to go to work in Alameda. So I have to take a bus to BART station in Daly City, take the BART to Alameda, get off at Coliseum station, and take another bus to work. That trip that day took me 2 hours. I buy the car the next day. The problem with public transit is how do you get from the transit station to your final destination? And that's something that technology can really help. For example, we have a lot of Facebook employees that are living along the peninsula. They could take Caltrain instead of driving their own. Now, we have reservation capacities in many of the driving apps where they can go onto the train and reserve the ride before they get off the train. So that 4 or 5 employees going to the same direction can share the same car, so that way they can get to their destination at work without adding to traffic. So we need to have a good public-private partnership to increase the efficacy of public transit. If you drive down 101 on really bad commute hours, and then you look on Mountain View side, and then you see the VTA just driving by almost empty, that's a very big waste of public resources. We need to make it work to making sure that the system is complete, have an integrated system, and also make sure that the last mile problem is solved so that people can actually get to their end destinations with public transit.
The question was, how do we improve public transportation? So one of the challenges that I've learned about Samtrans is that, one, their bus does not run frequent enough. And 2, there are not enough buses. And specifically in the morning for our students that go to Menlo, there are 100 plus students that are trying to catch the bus, and only 50 of them can get on the bus. And so then we put that on top of the Willow Road Overpass project, where up until recently you were not able to walk across it, and walking down to the pedestrian path is actually further out of the way for students. And so Samtrans did have a meeting here in the community, I believe it was last Thursday, so I was unable to attend it because it was also the same night as the State of the City. We asked that they would change it, but that did not happen. So I'm not sure if anyone in this room was able to attend that. Because Samtrans is actively trying to do something to improve public transportation in our neighborhood, which means it's very important for us to do outreach with them and include our thoughts if we are the ones riding the bus, or our children are riding the bus, or our seniors are riding the bus. The other challenge that I see is I see many buses that have 6 or less people on them. So how do you solve public transportation if people aren't using it? So you have to make it so it's more accessible, you have to make it so that it is offered at more frequent times, and you also have to make sure that it connects with the right places. Right now, we cannot leave here on a bus and go directly to Redwood City. You'd have to take 2 buses. So the other part is connectivity. So having a conversation with our public bus, which is Samtrans, would be the first step to improving public transportation. And then also holding them accountable. Transportation equity is a challenge in this neighborhood, and it's things that can be addressed with community outreach and also political will.
Thank you very much, and that will conclude the question and answer session of the evening. And now it's time to begin closing statements for the candidates. And Cecilia, we will begin with your closing statement.
Thank you. This was only 1 hour and 22 minutes. Okay. I am someone who has a great desire to learn and continuously improve. I work to address problems objectively, identify obstacles, and look for solutions that benefit the whole. My guiding principles are how to be most effective and how to encourage all Menlo Park residents to be civically engaged. It will take political will, political capital, and the movement of a community and the city as a whole to make effective change. As an elected official, I will promote integrity, transparency, accountability, and equity. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I really appreciate you taking time from your busy days to be here. I apologize. I was all dry up already, so out of water. But anyway, I thank you for being here, and I really want to tell you about my experiences in terms of city government and also my private experiences in database and management. So those are the things that will be very helpful to make sure that city is transparent and accountable. Now, going back, I have the experience more than 10 years of working with different cities, working with different agencies to make things work. I have the private sector experience to make sure that when we talk to companies like Facebook, as well as talking to transportation agencies and also private nonprofit organizations to make things happen, and that's very important skill sets. Going back in terms of representation, I am very accessible. You can always come to my house. I live on 1312 Madera Avenue. It's one block, very close, 3 houses from Ivy. Come to my house and talk to me about any issues. Like I said, I'm very open-minded. Perhaps you have a great idea. Maybe something that we can study or make it happen. Come to my house and talk about those ideas and bring it to me, and I will present you at the City Council. I will do the research for you. I will attend the meeting for you. I will do the homework for you to make sure that we make it work for everybody who lives in Bellhaven.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Cecilia. We would like to thank our candidates once again this evening for their participation and for their willingness to run for this very important office. And thank you so much for coming tonight, and good luck to both of you. We'd also like to thank our league team members, also Bellhaven Library, for kindly hosting this event tonight. And we thank, most importantly, you, the audience, for coming and for listening so politely, submitting all your fabulous questions. And we'd like to remind you to vote between now and November 6th, and I'm sure all of you here will. As a reminder also, be sure to look up more information about the candidates and both your state and local measures, as well as a video replay of this forum, which is going to be posted very soon on the League's election website, www.votersedge.org. If you're interested in learning more about the League of Women Voters, which, by the way, is a fabulous organization, take some of our literature. We have, I think we do have some, yes, over on the counter. Or feel free to ask one of us, one of the League volunteers. I think there's about 5 of us here tonight. So plenty of ways to get more information. But in the meantime, thank you again for coming. And good luck to everybody on Election Day. Thank you.